TikTok loses access to some of its biggest musical artists. What does that mean for TikTok? Is the end near? And Podfest 2024 was a great event. Does this mean the return of big events, or are we moving towards smaller events in the general rather than a few big events here and there? So we will discuss all of those things next on the StreamLeader Report Live Panel with Rebecca Gunter, Rob Greenlee, Claudia Santiago, and Ross Brand.
It's the StreamLeader Report Live Panel. Creators talking to creators. Raw, real, and unscripted. And sometimes they say the quiet part out loud. Here are your hosts, Claudia Santiago, Rebecca Gunter, Rob Greenlee, and Ross Brand.
Welcome to the StreamLeader Report Live Panel. And last week we were off. Rob and I were at Podfest. The week before, Rob, Claudia, and I were talking about the launch of the 100 Predictions Volume 4 book. Rebecca wasn't able to be here, but sent in a couple of videos, one of which I played a part of, and the other I'm going to play in just a second. We had a great panel joining us. We must have had, 10, 12 people in and out who were contributors to the book. But unfortunately, Rebecca, who was such a big part of this book, writing the forward along with Claudia and Rob, and she sent in a little message for everybody last week.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. I was just ordering 10 paperback copies of 100 live streaming and digital media predictions, Volume 4 by Ross Brand. Ching and send. Hey, Ross. Hey, Rob. Hey, Claudia. Hey, StreamLeader Report, Beauty Bubble, and everyone in the comments. I'm not able to make the show today, but I am absolutely there in spirit, celebrating the launch of this very special collaboration where 113 thought leaders, digital media creators, podcasters, and content geniuses come together to throw their prognostications into the ring, into the zeitgeist, as it were, and predict the future for our industry and the impact it will have on the world tomorrow and for many years to come. Congratulations, Ross. You are the man. And Claudia and Rob, it was so incredible to collaborate on this creative approach to the forward for this year's edition. This was one of the funnest things I did all year, and it was awesome to get to know you and weave your vision for 100 Predictions along with Ross's vision for 100 Predictions and create something better than the sum of its parts. This is a true collaborative effort, and I am so here for it. Congratulations, Collaboration Nation, Ross Brand, 100 Predictions for live streaming and digital media, StreamLeader Report. And again, our friends in the comments, this is an epic milestone, and I'm so happy to be here for it.
Thanks, Rebecca. That was really, really cool.
Aw, now I'm a little misty.
We missed you 2 weeks ago. It was such a fun time, but I appreciate the videos.
That broke my heart, man. It broke my heart not to be here, but it was circumstances beyond my control. So thanks for letting me participate, and I truly was there in spirit.
Anything surprise you about the book launch or the experience once we get past the writing of the book? Kind of, I assume this is your first time going through a launch where your name's on the cover. So
yeah, that's surreal, but also kind of a dream come true. So what I didn't expect was, I guess, the international skyrocketing bestseller list. And what I did expect was to see a bunch of people really come together in community and share how much it meant to them to participate in the project and be a part of it. I had FOMO so fucking bad, man, with all these beautiful people in the comments and community, and FOMO while you guys were at Podfest 24. So, Claudia, I think next year we need to have a StreamLeader Report live panel at Podfest.
Yes.
I think you both have to go to Podfest.
Yes, we
That's-
do.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's like pretty much a wrap, RB.
'Cause-
I can't take it. I couldn't take the FOMO.
Plus, Rob doesn't have enough to do while he's down there. He could do another show. We could
That's
add
right,
to his,
yeah.
Right.
his
What's
workload.
one more? Just show
when
up.
you're
Right.
not inducting people into the Podcaster Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
I gotta say, Rob was one of the stars of Podfest by far. Not only did he bring the Hall of Fame back, but he brought the keynote speaker and Hall of Fame MC, Dr. Drew, who was a big hit at the event. I got a little bit of video of Rob talking about the Hall of Fame.
Big picture of what this event, the Hall of Fame, represents to the podcasting community. And I think one of the things that the community has expressed to me over the years is just how we as an industry value the contributions of people that have started this medium and really built it and really inspired so many others to create podcasts and to build successful shows. And that's really what the Hall of Fame is about, is to recognizing those individuals that have contributed significantly. We've inducted about, I believe, 41 inductees so far.
Yeah, at the end of this event, yes.
Okay, and so that is, we've got a long way to go. There's a lot more inductees.
So that was Rob during the Hall of Fame ceremony, and just a taste of Dr. Drew, because he really got into the spirit of it and was really, I think he's not just a famous person who does a podcast, but somebody who really appreciates what the medium is and was happy to be around people from all different walks of life and all different levels who were doing podcasts.
Isn't it great having the freedom to go directly to your audience? I talked about it this morning. To me, that was such an astonishing reality. So let's get to it. Again, this is the 2024 Podcast Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And tonight marks the 6th induction ceremony. And of course, people like my longtime friend Adam Carolla will be inducted. Jesse Thorne of NPR.
So anyway, that's Dr. Drew, and it was a great event all around, Podfest. A remarkable job by Chris Kremitzos and the team at Podfest to build the event back up after all the lockdowns and the shutdowns and the starts and stops, to build it back up to at least where it was prior, and maybe even more people came this year than in 2020. When they had really gotten to their heights just before everything was kind of taken away. So I guess a question I'll just throw out on to the panel is, where are we going with events? Are we going back to big industry events? I mean, I would call this, for the podcasting industry, probably the second biggest event in the world. So this would be a national, international style conference, or are we going smaller? Are we going virtual? What do you guys see coming up in the next, 6 to 12 months?
I have a question.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the second largest, what's the first one?
Podcast movement would be the largest.
Where's that? Where does that happen?
That moves around. This year it's in DC. Would you say that's accurate, Rob?
Yeah. And then the Evolutions event is happening in LA in March, and that's probably a little bit smaller than Podfest. So they actually have 2 events. Now I would say that probably the rival with Podcast Movement is the podcast show in London. So it's probably about the same size as far as attendees as Podcast Movement. But that's more of representing the industry from a a global perspective, really more. I mean, that event pulls from Europe and kind of mainly from Europe, but more and more people from the United States are going over there too, which is bumping their numbers. Yeah, I was over there as a speaker a couple of years ago, and there's talk about me going back here again here in May is when that event is held. But yeah, so I would say that the podcast show and podcast movement are kind of rivals right now, and I would say Podfest could, it's going to be interesting to see in the next year whether or not Podfest kind of matches those two other events, because clearly back in 2020 it was looking like Podfest was going to be the biggest event in the country. That's the direction that it was going, and then COVID hit us and really kind of knocked them back a little bit, and it made them really more of a virtual event for a couple of years. Right. But yeah, this past year for Podfest was a little not this year, but the prior year to this was a little smaller, and the event was kind of struggling to come back a little bit. But now I think this year we're over the hump, so we could see these three events be kind of in parallel in the next year.
Follow-up question, Rob.
Yeah.
What is the Podcaster Hall of Fame, and how does one get inducted into it?
Okay.
# asking for a friend.
Yeah, it's actually a common question I'm getting to. Actually, I've done a couple of podcasts talking about that. I did one yesterday on the New Media Show. I had Tom Webster from Sounds Profitable on, and formerly with Edison Research on, and we talked extensively about the Podcast Hall of Fame on the New Media Show. So if you wanted to see a deeper analysis of that,
good plug.
That would be a good place to go. And then I did a full episode on the Hall of Fame prior to that as well. So yeah, I'm excited about the potential Hall of Fame. I've gotten a lot of feedback from it that the induction and selection process probably needs to be broadened to a larger number of participants in the selection as well as the picking and the voting.
Who's picking? Who's voting?
It's currently the selection process is currently being done by all of the past inductees right now. So it is a little bit kind of enclosed in that community right now. I mean, a lot of the folks that have been inducted, there's about 41 inductees right now. And of that group, that's the group that really kind of picks who the inductees are. But I do think that, and I've heard some feedback on this, that needs to be widened to include other people that are not necessarily have been inducted, to create kind of a better pool. And I think that's actually wise too. But the criteria really is it's really focused on impact and longevity to some degree, but it's not a big criteria. But it's really about performance, being a significant influence in the development of podcasting from kind of a historical perspective. But increasingly, I'm feeling that we need to embrace more kind of modern, more current podcasters in consideration for this. But I do think, to have kind of like, it's a little bit like a lifetime achievement award of sorts. So you can't really have a lifetime achievement award given to someone that's only been podcasting for 2 years. That doesn't really make a lot of logical sense, because it isn't like a podcast awards. And I think there's a lot of people conflating the two together and wanting us to pick Hall of Fame inductees that are from like the sports genre or the comedy genre or the, that kind of stuff. I think there's a tendency to want to do that, and that's not what the intent is here. I think it's to recognize people that are not necessarily on microphone. There are people that are working behind the scenes to make this happen as well. And a great example of that is one of the inductees that we had this year was Lori Sims, who was the former president of Libsyn, who actually never went to events, never done a podcast, but was one of the key drivers of the early years of building the very first podcast hosting platform. So, and was a critical player in that. I was hired by Lori to work for Libsyn and worked with her for many years myself. But I think it's another example of, it's not just about podcasters per se. It's about podcasting, really, and the business and the function of it, and who's had an impact on helping others become podcasters and become successful, and recognizing those people that have had a big impact. And that's the intent of this.
Well, something for all of our creators up and coming. And
Yeah, everybody
look
should
forward to.
strive for being a
Something to aspire to.
yeah, having a big impact on the medium. And it's not an easy thing or something that everyone's going to be able to achieve, but we definitely want to recognize those that have been able to make that kind of an impact, like an Adam Carolla or whatever. And I can go ad nauseum about Adam Carolla, about the various elements over the history of the podcasting meeting that he's had a significant impact on. And there's many people that may not know that. So that's another.
He really got
factor
into
here
it
too.
early, right? I mean,
he started about 2009 is when he started. I was kind of in contact with his team at the time and was helping him back in those days. But really, Adam really, I mean, he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the most downloaded podcast in history. And then he also was pivotal in overcoming a podcasting patent troll that was like a dark cloud over the industry, that this one company owned the process of podcasting and was going around starting to sue companies. And so Adam really stepped up to the plate and did a bunch of fundraising and did advocacy, got on mainstream media talking about this patent troll that was really having a significant impact on people's confidence in the medium.
Well, you could even make an argument that the Man Show was a proto podcast.
Well, I don't want to go there about that show. That's politically incorrect to talk about that show.
Is it? I remember when it was on. So.
Oh, I do too. Yeah.
The other person who I was really happy to see was Daniel J. Lewis. I mean, when you talk about contributions to the industry, I mean, he's obviously an accomplished podcaster and has an audience and all that, but he's developed products. He's done so many how-to and helpful videos and instructional things that he's done, even things he's just done on his own to figure out what would be good for people in the industry. He's an example of somebody who wasn't necessarily with a big company, but on his own, he made a pretty big impact in helping other people.
Right. And I think
in
a
the
lot
industry
of
in general, I think.
Right. And I think a lot of things that Daniel contributed to the medium was really challenging the norms of the medium to some degree and questioning what people were saying about the medium and really kind of focusing on the data and focusing on the facts of the medium to help people have a better understanding, because we've been battling for many years around kind of, hate to say, but kind of misinformation in the podcasting space too, and people being given bad advice and bad direction. And so he's had a big impact on that too.
Before we get to TikTok, because I know Rebecca's chomping at the bit.
Chomping at the bit. We got to get to TikTok.
I do want to bring up a few people who had predictions or analysis in the book about events and see what you all think about their comments. Yeah. Brian Wallace is actually putting together a regional event this year. He says, we'll see a rise in more thoughtful, focused, and targeted regional in-person events taking shape in the coming years. People crave human contact. Laura Davidson's a representative and a marketing leader at Shure, and she's been at all the big events, it seems, in the podcasting and broadcasting industry. She says, we'll see a movement towards smaller, more personalized creator conferences and events and a move away from large-scale shows. Marissa Calley puts on events at Be Present LLC. She says micro events are golden for those trying to stand out, high-touch, immersive experiences for intentional conversations and serendipitous moments. And Mike Alton works for Agora Pulse and is also a consultant, I believe, with other companies. He's definitely big in putting on events and well known for that in the industry. He says businesses will be forced financially to reinvest in virtual events, both from a marketing demand gen perspective and from a consumption perspective. So there are 4 people who are highly involved in the event industry who are all looking at small or virtual, and we're just walking away from what I would consider at least national, maybe international, certainly North American, although there were people from all over the world there, event. And so what do you guys think on what we experienced versus what's being predicted for 2024?
Ross, I have a question again. I'm sorry to
Absolutely.
hijack everything with a question. On the last slide,
Yes.
what's the what is demand gen versus consumption? I think you mean live versus like go back and watch the replay. But could you tell the newbie creators out there like myself what those 2 words mean?
Both from a marketing demand gen perspective and from a consumption perspective. If he's
What's
talking
Mark
about
Alton
what,
talking about?
oh, go ahead. He's talking about from the company's perspective. So demand is, building up demand, I believe, generating demand for the products
At those events, right?
at the events. And then the other is the actual consumers buying the products and how many sales do you get, right? So it's building up awareness and brand recognition. Is that how you would look at it, Rob?
Yeah.
And
And I
the
think
other part is actually how many do you move any products at the event?
Yeah, I think you're seeing it a little bit. I mean, one of the comments, I can't remember the person's name, but was from Shure. Is that some of those hardware manufacturers have been pulling out of the larger events, so they're not participating in the bigger events, and I see them kind of shifting over to thinking more about local and regional events. And I've been seeing that trend for a while now, and I'm also seeing that the big events have been kind of stagnant in their growth, because it's expensive to travel now. It's expensive for hotels, airport, airline costs are going up, and we're being, I hate to say it, Ross, but we're being disincentivized to travel now because it's so expensive, and that's one of the side effects. And I'm involved in a couple of local, like tri-state events here in New York area and New Jersey and stuff like that are kind of local meetup type events. And I can definitely see those taking off. And I know both of Podcast Movement as well as Podfest have been doing an active campaign about local events, right? So they're going to the people instead of expecting the people to come to their big events.
Well, that answers Ross's question as well. What do you think?
I think for companies like Shure, they're pretty well known now. I mean, like their microphones are all over the industry.
Yeah, this is the number one microphone in podcasting now, clearly. Right?
So if sales aren't a big point at some of the big events, it's probably better to go to smaller events, save the money, not pay for the big spend and the big outlay and all that, and then talk to the customers directly and get feedback and, even sell products or do a giveaway or what have you and come away really strengthening relationships with people who are like your ambassadors out in the field.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a staff that's scattered all over the country, it may be cheaper to just have your staff drive to a local event and just, you could save a lot of money. And I don't know if you're going to reach more people, but you may reach people in a different way.
Yeah,
I think from looking at the expo at Podfest, it was definitely busy, and it seemed like the brands that were there were getting a lot out of it.
Yep.
But the bigger manufacturers that you're used to seeing at these events weren't as present. And I don't know whether that also helped open up opportunities for other companies or whether there's just a hunger to reconnect in person with companies and learn about new companies and stuff like that. But the expo was definitely busy, and it seemed like the companies that bought in were getting a lot of attention.
I think it's the quality of the connections that the
Oops.
We lost Claudia there.
Right at the wrong time.
And she's back.
I'm not sure why that's happening, but I'm back.
You were saying it's about the quality of the connection.
Quality of the
Oh
connection.
my God.
Bing, bing. Ba-dum-bum.
It's the quality of the connection.
I couldn't resist.
and it's like a grassroots revolution that is happening more, where people are gathering to richen and deepen those connections. I know personally I'd rather invest in going to a smaller conference rather than one where it's just so massive that you're really not building those relationships. So anyways, in entertainment, we still have the large events, I'm just going to say, but there's the smaller ones too. In the fashion industry, all the fashion shows they're not massive, but when they do run them, they are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Claudia, what's the number one event you like to go to for within the entertainment field? What's your jam, and why do you do it?
So industry event, you mean, or concert event? Industry event. It's more for me where it's a media kind of event. I'm not really like NAMM. I'm not really a gear junkie, although Bruce would say different. No, don't get me wrong. I love still going to those types of events, but for me, it's more, I get a real, where I'm seeing the artists actually going to the media booths and getting their interviews. I find that intriguing because to me, I get to see the newbie artists that was just barely trickling in years ago. And all of a sudden you get to see their growth. You get to see where their story's at. You get, as you kind of walk around and you hear this. And anyways, that's kind of more of my jam. So I'm not so much the gear junkie.
Yeah, NAMM was going on at the same time as Podfest, right?
Yeah.
So that could also pull some big brands away as well. Yeah. But I think maybe it's also about engaging with the kind of people who go to an event like Podfest at, like I say, smaller venues and smaller regional events. Let's move on to TikTok, because TikTok recently lost its music rights to use BMG music. Rebecca, this is your jam. TikTok.
It's my jam, but this is Claudia's story.
Oh, okay.
And this affects her personally.
All right, you go ahead first, Claudia.
This is you, baby.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that in Canada, we can't even monetize. But yeah.
On TikTok or on anything?
TikTok.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's really wild because, it's not just TikTok. I'm dealing with Canada. So Canada, you don't get news, I get monetized. Anyways, but you know what? We go around that stuff and we figure out a way to do some things. So anyway, but TikTok, the labels, Universal especially, has had an issue with TikTok. Now, what's interesting, and I don't know if you guys read I think it was the last link I sent in our group, but part of the beef, and this is where our AI conversation also comes in, part of the beef is some social platforms are now, instead of when you do a post or a story or a reel, you can actually choose music from an artist. Like you can look up my stuff and you'll find me there. But when you choose music to add to your post, what's happened is that social platform has had an agreement with the record label and the distribution companies. Okay. So what's happening now with AI is there's also the AI generated artists. So you got the human artist, then you got the AI Drake. Okay. So this is part of the beef with TikTok and the record label. The record label is going, no. You're not going to replace AI for my artist. See what I'm saying? Right. And then, so this whole other controversy. Now, TikTok's the first one that's done this with this record label. But, you know, to give you an example, like there's big names on that label, like Taylor Swift. Like, how many people on TikTok aren't doing their little post and adding Taylor's stuff on there? Why? Because she's trending. She's, you know, got great music. And yeah. So, you know, either TikTok's totally shot themselves in the foot or they're being forward thinking. See what I'm saying? Because I'll tell you something. I did a post. I think it was I did a reel on Facebook, and I chose this music, and I thought, man, that's a killer track for this certain post I'm doing. And it was a robot. It was an AI. Yeah. And now my issue now is if I want to repurpose that, some platforms won't take it.
So when you say that the AI, are they replicating artists' music? Is that what they're doing with a close facsimile to the artist's music? Is that
both, Rob? They are doing that, but they are also creating just AI artists.
Oh, just completely fabricated artists. Okay.
Yeah. So now this record label doesn't want that because they want to protect their songwriters. Again, we're back to the writers. Their songwriters, they want their songwriters to be compensated and to be, you know, and so what this record label is saying no to is platforms that are going to allow the AI at a bigger speed than some other platforms.
So is there any truth to TikTok's claim that the United Music Group is only doing this to protect their own financial interests?
I am unclear right now, to be honest, because it seems that the record label is accusing TikTok of having a separate agenda. Okay, which I'm not quite sure yet what really is happening. But then also, and I get this, TikTok tried to come under with a dollar value for the licensing as well. And probably because they can get it cheaper if we've got more AI generated content. Hello.
Right.
I put a piece of media up that really is a beautiful kind of TLDR, if you want me to play it, from this creator about this scenario.
Okay.
Her name is V, and the program is called Under the Desk News, and this is one of the most prolific TikTokers that there is. So I thought this was a really nice summary. Like me to play it?
Fire away.
Okay. Awesome. Are we there, Ross? Tell me if you
are.
can. Okay,
Me and
awesome.
Dottie were just getting ready for bed, but then Alex sent me this article.
Can you turn up the
Apparently
volume on your
tomorrow,
own?
TikTok is going to lose their ability to use music on the app. Universal Music Group is threatening to pull the song catalog from TikTok. And what would the TikTok app be without the music? I mean, almost every single video uses music. Now, the music groups are complaining that TikTok has made a billion-dollar business that's a music business without paying the proper royalties to the artists. And TikTok has really gotten into the music business. I mean, they did a huge music festival called In the Mix just a couple of weeks ago. They've got the Elevate program that's supposed to identify emerging artists. But here's the thing. TikTok had been trying to negotiate with Universal and Warner and the other music companies to get a fair cut for artists and a fair cut for TikTok. TikTok is arguably one of the biggest music distribution and discoverability platforms there are. And they want to make a direct deal with artists to license their music instead of going through the orgs. I don't know. What do you think? Would you use TikTok if you couldn't use music for a little while? Do you hope that TikTok negotiates directly with artists to use their music? This is quite the shakeup.
That does add another mention to this
Yeah.
this discussion. Yeah.
So I just want to kind of, for those that are watching and don't really understand how artists get their music on a platform, it's like this. Okay, if you're an independent artist, so if you're an independent artist or you're a record label, what happens is you can't just go knocking directly on TikTok store and go, hey, I got great music. Can you throw it on? Can you spin it? Right? You can't. What happens is it goes through another party called a distribution company. Okay, so record labels usually have a deal with a distribution company. Okay, so that's, if you think about it on a business end, distribution company is collecting dollars somewhere. Okay.
Right.
Independent artist goes to distribution company. They've got to also pay to play, so to speak. Okay. Then after distribution, it goes to the Spotify's, the TikToks, the Facebooks, all that. Okay. All those have agreements with the distribution company. Without that in the middle, it ain't happening.
Yeah, and those distribution companies. One of the biggest ones is called CD Baby.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what happens here is the independent artist, even to get it to the distribution, has to pay. Record labels, same thing. Okay. You got songwriters here. You got producers, you got musicians, you got studio costs, to produce even a single is even if you do it in your friggin' basement, okay? But at the end of the day, I'll tell you something. I personally know huge name songwriters, and some of their checks, their monthly check is like 30 cents.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Maybe $1. Hey, and they all joke around. They go, hey, who wants to go for lunch? Okay. So what happens here, it is a business. So everybody gets a cut. So by the time, now I want to say this, TikTok is paying. It's not sometimes when news like this comes out, people go, TikTok's like jipping off everyone. No, I can see in my dashboard that I make money from the TikTok. My distribution company shows every single platform and, where it is bringing in money. So they are paying. So sometimes, news gets sensational and people get the wrong idea about stuff is what I'm trying to say here. So what's interesting now is this was once upon a time was a human artist, a record label with human artists. Now we got AI, where the record labels are even creating a new branch of artists, which is their AI artist. The issue is all this has come about so fast that social media, the platforms haven't even put in place what are they going to do. So this is where it becomes really messy. It's a jungle out there.
Well, and the labels don't have the best of reputations really for looking out for the interests of the artists either. So that's the other end of the spectrum here. We have to realize is that Universal Music Group is a business that profits from their creators, and if they're in the middle of this negotiation, they're going to think about their interests typically ahead of the artists. So TikTok is accurate in that little subhead that they said but that's not directly connected to this particular controversy. It's just generally kind of the undertow of the industry is that the creators are the ones that get left on the sidelines in all these deals.
So you mentioned AI, and from the point of the record labels or distributors, is the idea of creating AI artists so that the actual artist has no rights to that money that the AI artist?
Well, if it's not linked to an artist,
is the AI really replicating exactly the artist and the music, or is it creating something that's
Probably
just
a facsimile.
a beat different enough that it's an
Right.
original piece of music.
Yes, I would say that would be what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I'd be very curious because one of the things that actually is I find to be completely delightful on TikTok is when one musician will stitch onto another musician and create a whole new thing by like adding to it, and then the drummer will come in and add to it. So it's almost like sampling happening in real time. Like the evolution of the creativity and the collaboration is off the charts, and who
Exactly.
gets to profit from that
So
within the context of
you're
this.
you're so right, Rebecca, and that is such a beautiful thing because it's like it's a collaborative thing and it's a whole new thing.
Yeah.
But this is where the record labels are going, wait a minute. Yeah, wait a minute. Like once upon a time, like I think we're up to a minute now on Facebook, but once upon a time, the deal was they could only have in their library a 15-second clip of that music. Okay, so now where the record labels are going, well, wait a minute, because technically it can be plagiarism, and way back you could see people taking someone to court for 4 beats of a song, or if the melody was so close, or the hook in the song was so close, they could take them to court for plagiarism. So this is where Universal is saying, and again, it's unclear what the agendas really are, because some of these record labels also, like I'm going to use Taylor as an example again, her own songs, they wouldn't even give her catalog back to her. They would not. So what she did is good for you, she launched her whole her whole bunch of songs on her own because they were her songs. Okay, so some of these labels are getting there's knickers in a knot, because exactly what you said, Rebecca, is TikTok is too creative. And with clips of those things that are being reproduced, who's getting the money? That original songwriter. And like I said, there's so many costs. Songwriters who we all enjoy their songs, and producers and radio and marketing dollars, everything else has made those their way into our hearts. Those songwriters who came up with that first idea are living on craft dinner. Right?
I'm so glad you brought up craft dinner.
That's been the whole fight through the ages. And while it's a beautiful thing to be a songwriter, it's not a huge money-making thing. So some of these labels say they're fighting for their artists, but are they really? So that's why years ago, many artists peeled away from that and began to be independent artists. And I'll just shut up here in a minute, but I can get on a rant with this. So here's the thing. Years ago, the artists were being, dollars were being put in to the artists through a label. They were all fixed up. They were told, you don't talk directly to your audience because artists don't do that, all that kind of BS, right? And then the thing is, the minute that artist wasn't, 18 years old or 16 years old anymore, it's like, okay, we're gonna move on, and we're gonna put our development dollars into the up and coming. Well, what happened then is the labels let go of so many amazing artists, and guess what? They had their database. The artists had no business. They had the record label held on to the whole business structure. So it left all these artists, which are amazing, without a business. And meanwhile, they were the writers, they were the performers, so that's where years ago, many artists split out from the record label deals and began on their own. So I'm thinking, and the sense I have is now we're back at another pivotal point in history in this revolution thing, where we're going to see, I don't know, maybe instead of an independent artist, there's going to be another classification even with that, where maybe artists will be able to go direct to the social platforms.
Or maybe they'll be able to form their own groups, their own networks of artists managed by, run by maybe a rotating board or something like that from within them, who, they all agree on certain principles, and, they're signing contracts with each other versus putting it into an organization outside and saying, okay, I'll create the value. Now you can monetize it and give me a penny or two per, every $100 or whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think
Rob.
this is a sign that maybe labels like the Universal Music Group and Sony Music and stuff may be losing control of the artist, because it is increasingly technologically possible because CD Baby already has those direct relationships right now, that there's no reason TikTok couldn't go directly to CD Baby and establish those connections and those relationships.
Now, what you need to understand too is even on YouTube, okay, I'm just going to throw this out, okay, there are artists that it is their music, it's their songwriting, it's theirs everything, okay, and they'll put a song or a video on YouTube with them even performing it or whatever, and all of a sudden Universal Music Group will throw a copyright on it, and they prove this is ours, but Universal Group won't even respond to the artist. See what I'm saying? So in media, on paper, they say, oh, we're all about the artist, protecting the artist, right? And everything. Well, we won't even respond to the friggin' artist. So, it's a whole lot of bureaucracy. And so sometimes, when they say, well, TikTok has an agenda, well, okay. Well, what's your agenda, Universal? I know you're a business.
Right.
There's a few extremely wealthy artists who also watch YouTube, and if somebody's teaching how to play their song or something, they'll throw a copyright in, and you think, gee, at age 70, 80 something with hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, isn't there a better way to spend your time?
Right.
Like, didn't you do well enough off of that if some kid wants to teach, for a few views or whatever, people how to play, part of your song, it's not the same thing as the average artist getting ripped off.
Exactly. Right. And what? I love my songwriters. I have some brilliant songwriters. I love them all. But, I've had the odd one too that has that, I'm just going to say, poverty mentality where, they would, okay, I'm going to give you an example. I had one songwriter. We spend time in the studio, musicians, travel, producers, the whole 9 yards. We spent a lot of money. Okay, this was going to be two radio singles, and there was money spent on radio packages. It all went out to radio. I mean, we're talking a lot of dollars. Plus, not only that, when I like a song and I pour my heart and soul into interpreting it as Claudia Santiago, okay, I don't, and I take a long time to like when they pitch me songs, I go, okay, does this work with my story? Does this work with the fabric of who I am? Does this work with the audience that I've been growing? Like, what is it? How's it going to connect? Okay. So anyways, we did all that. And the songwriter was just kookaburra. Like he kept writing me saying, I want a list of all the places you're performing at. I'm going to contact them directly. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I mean, at the end of the day, this guy had no couth, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that could ruin my relationship with my agents and the venues and all that. So, my manager just said, yeah, no, we're going to cut this guy off. He's kookaburra. But I'm telling you, like, tens of thousands of dollars lost, gone. I still have those radio singles. I still have those radio packages. We had to literally call all the radio stations and get them to take it off rotation. It was like, so I'm just saying, songwriters are amazing, and I really believe in protecting their rights, just like any writer. But at the end of the day, like, really, you're going. So I mean, he blew his chance at working with me and growing with me.
And haven't we always had a tradition where once a song's written and it's out in the catalog of the world or whatever, it's open to interpretation and being covered. And if it turns out to be a successful cover, then the writer makes some money from it and increases their fame.
So now what we do is when we're considering songs for my projects, because my projects, as you know, they're multifaceted, is we actually tour the song for quite a while first. Usually it's the other way around. You write, record, produce, release, then you tour it. Now I do things the other way around. I work my song on stage first to see if it's going to connect with my audience. And through all that too, you get to see who, because your songwriters are part of your team, your producers are part of your team.
That's how comedians prepare for a special. They work it on the road.
To see if the team's going to work, And so anyways, I digress a bit, but it all ties into this whole TikTok thing. And I think what we're going to see in the entertainment industry is a new twist on how they're going to include the AI and work with record labels with social.
Rebecca, you got a video for us.
I do. I thought this would be, it's not perfect. I kind of did it on the fly of trying to find something. But I thought this was an excellent example of why is music so important to TikTok. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about just, artists who want to come on and build a platform for themselves? Music is so inherent in the DNA of anything that happens on TikTok. And this conversation is so interesting because just if we take a look at this little clip, it's not long. The song will be instantly recognizable to you. And these two creators are prolific on TikTok. They do a lot of stuff in a public school cafeteria or office. So if they are making money, if their content is monetized and they've got music behind it, when does the composer of this instantly recognizable song get theirs, if any? So let's play it. Are you ready?
Fire away.
Do we have any concern about playing it?
What do you mean?
With YouTube, right?
We'll be okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me. So to the point of I know it's a silly example, but that is a very famous track.
Yes.
And if these ladies make money off of their content in which they're basically doing a cover with wrapping paper tubes, this is how music is just inherent in everything. Are there TikTok people who don't use music? Yeah, but even the word sound is that's a clip or a sample. That would pretty much disintegrate the fabric of the creativity there. I thought it was worth looking at. Are we talking about just YouTube videos of people, bands on stage? We're talking about every single piece of creative content on TikTok.
And you see, and we trust the distribution company deals that they've made with those platforms to be compensating accordingly. Okay. And I can see that TikTok's compensating what I create, through the distribution company. So I'm not quite sure what Universal is getting at there, other than they're taking little clips and remixing. And then it's okay, TikTok, that's my artist that's being remixed.
We lost the chain of custody on that.
Correct.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Claudia, is your music on Instagram and YouTube as well?
Yes.
For shorts and reels?
Yes. So, you can if you're posting a story or a reel or even a post, you can look for Claudia Santiago and you'll find my singles and my upcoming singles that you can take and add. Now, I'm just going to say this, even with my new fashion launch, I have a fashion boutique that I've just launched. For me, I do use some of my music, and that I'm always thinking about how I'm going to help compensate my songwriters, because I'm so thankful for them. So what I try and do is use my music into some of my posts and things. But with my fashion launch, part of my strategy is that I choose music that's sung in Italian or Portuguese or Spanish. So not necessarily English at all, because I want to bring that international flair and flavor to my fashion boutique, because that's part of my target market. So what I do is I choose that, and I'm really hoping that I can still do that on TikTok. If I can't, that would be a real bummer, because, I trust, because I want those artists also to benefit from me using their music and giving them exposure.
Final question, if anybody has a quick answer to this, either knows factually or just has a theory, why are we hearing TikTok with Universal and not Shorts and not Reels, not Instagram and not YouTube?
It's just a different deal, probably, and it's also a scale thing too. I think a lot of the TikTok perception out there is that that's the fastest growing platform, right? So it's the biggest target for these labels, and the bigger question I have for Claudia here too is, are we seeing the erosion of the relevance of these large labels? And this is an effort to hold on to control. And is it really in the best interest of the artists to take this granular attack on these platforms? And is Universal Music Group more concerned about their income stream than they are about the artists?
Yeah. You got to remember, once again, while a record label is developing an artist, because they're not just releasing the music, they're actually developing the artist. They have in-house people, A&R people, guys that I've worked with, and they know their stuff, and they know how to pull the story out of an artist, how to develop that artist. It's a beautiful science, actually. One day we'll talk about it more.
Mhm.
But it is a beautiful thing. Artist development is huge, and it's a beautiful thing. Record labels are a business. They'll develop the artist, but the minute the newbies come along, they'll develop that 16-year-old, 18-year-old. Once you hit that 20, 22 mark, you're considered old already. It's like the modeling industry. It's like Hollywood. No, it really is.
Yeah.
And so they'll make a lot of money with the young ones. Okay. So what I'm saying, Rob, is it is a business. So they will do what they need to do to grow that business. Why? Because they don't want to go bankrupt. They want to stay in the biz.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the artist concerned with the major labels is not much. Other than let's create a product. We're a product. Let's create a product that's going to shine and make us money that we can hit and throw it on the road while they eat craft dinner on the road and keep making money. But the minute that starts to dwindle, or that next 16-year-old comes along, hey, toodles. So.
All right, gang, we're up against it. This has been a great conversation. I'm sure we're going to continue as all these issues with new media and old business models and new business models rushing up against each other create for conflict and also for interesting conversation. Claudia, tell everybody about your new line real quick. Where can we find out more information about it?
Yes. Go to Bella, BELLA, Santiago Couture.com.
BellaSantiagoCouture.com.
And it's named after my grandma, Bella, which means beautiful in Spanish and Italian, which is some of my family roots. So anyways, you'll find all kinds of really cool things in there for men and women. And there's different collections. There's even a rock collection in there. So, you can channel your rock and roll diva. Or, there's beautiful things, glamorous things as well. And we have also a developing maternity and baby collection in there as well. So enjoy it.
Rob, what's coming up on podcasting tips tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah, I've got a terrific guest that's a kind of an executive producer of podcasts out of Hollywood that's going to going to join me to talk about some of the philosophies that he brings to large scale podcasts, and share that with the group. So I'm excited to have him on. His name is Jack Levy, and he works kind of also for iHeartRadio, but he has his own media production company out of LA that works with some big celebrities and things like that. So we're going to talk about kind of the concepts that he works on with these larger celebrity podcasts that makes them grow so fast. So, and it may be a tough conversation somewhat, because a lot of people that maybe are listening to our show are not celebrities. So that is an advantage. And I'm going to challenge him on this. Well, how can someone that isn't a celebrity status be able to utilize these strategies and these techniques to grow as well?
And I assume those folks all have big teams as well. Like when they're doing their podcast, right? And they're yelling out to this person or that person, "Oh, get me the stats on this, or get me the figures on that, or can you pump up that video?"
Just like you, Ross.
Yeah, come on.
Right.
I know.
All right, Rebecca.
I'm ready to be Ross's lackey.
Yeah.
Ross, I'm gonna turn it on to you. What does a 4-time best-selling author who just released his book have next on your horizon?
Taking a long nap.
Oh boy!
By the way, I just want to say what an honor, an absolute honor and joy it has been to be in this Volume 4 book, and and working with all of you guys. Like, thank you, Ross.
Thank you, and
Thank you,
thanks
Ross.
to everyone who contributed. It was a wonderful experience. We did really well with the new book. Rebecca does Business in the Raw and the Stone Fruit Roll Up. Check her out. The YouTube channel Stone Fruit Roll Up, and the website Stone Fruit.
The Stone Fruit, STONED FRUIT. That's same as the YouTube channel. Thanks for popping by the roll up today, Ross.
Yeah,
You were
great
awesome
show
in the
today.
comments.
Always like seeing the big reveal of the branding statements.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, for the StreamLeader Report live panel, take care. We'll see you next Thursday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, because that's when we do that.